All right, Math 103, 5.6, exponents and scientific notation. I'm going to break this video in half, so we're going to do exponents on the first end, and then we'll do scientific notation in another video. So the properties of exponents, you're going to need to know these rules and how exponents work. So we know that, remember, 5 to the third power means 5 times 5 times 5. So if I were to write this out, I would have 3 5s represented by the first base and power, and then I would have 7 5s, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so if I totaled up all of those 5s, I would now have 10, okay? And so there's going to be two parts of this. Sometimes they're going to ask you to actually calculate it, and sometimes they're just going to ask you for the expression using the exponent, okay? But that's a lot of work to have to write all of those numbers out and then count it. So there's an easier way to do it. And so we will use the rule of writing the base and adding the exponents. What I want you to make sure is that the base never changes. You do not multiply 5 times 5 and make that 25. So do not do this and then add the exponents. Those are not equal. You write the base and add the exponents. And I like to draw like a little line since I'm moving laterally and add those exponents. So this time my base is in parentheses, so that needs to be written. And then I take 3 plus 2 and I write 5. And then if they ask me to carry that out, then I could do that. I could take -3 times -3 times -3 times -3 times one more, and that's going to be -243, okay? So if they ask you for the exponential representation, it would be -3 in parentheses raised to the 5th power. If they ask you to simplify, that number would be a -243. If you do not see an exponent, know that there's always a 1 there. So this would be 5 to the 3rd power, and that would be one answer. And then they would actually want you to multiply those 5s out so that you got 125, okay? Now, the quotient rule is going to look like this. If we had 9 7s, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we divide those by 4 7s, okay? Each one of those 7s over 7 makes 1. And so what I'm left with is 5 7s. So how do we get that rule is we write the base, take the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. Again, do not actually divide these out, because if I take 7 and divide it by 7, I'm going to get 1. And then if I take 9 minus 4, I get 5. Well, 1 to the 5th is just 1, but 7 to the 5th is not 1, okay? So don't actually do the dividing out. I always stress, keep the base unchanged. Write the big number, subtract the exponents. So that becomes 6 squared, which then they would want also 6 times 6 to be simplified, okay? Write the base, -4. 8 minus 4 is 4, and then carry that out. -4 times -4 times -4. My goodness, I don't know what that is. So get my calculator. I would raise that to, whoops, clear. And that would be positive 256, okay? All right. So that's the first two rules. Multiplication, product rule, and then we have the quotient rule. But now we have a power rule. And so I like to write this a little bit higher because the exponent doesn't get high enough for me. So I like to do this. When I'm going up to a higher power, I am going to multiply those exponents. So again, the base stays unchanged. So write the big number, take 3 times 4, and you will get 2 to the 12th power. They will never ask you to calculate a base to a power that's greater than 5, okay? Usually that's the rule of thumb. If it's 5 or less, you should be able to calculate it, but if it's more than 5, you just leave it. So this becomes write the base, multiply the exponents. Write the base, multiply these exponents. Write the base, multiply those exponents. Now that one you can simplify because 1 to any power is going to be positive 1. Okay? Now we're going to talk about negative exponents. So negative exponents are a little bit tricky. One way to look at this is that if I were to write this out, x times x times x, that's what x to the third is. X times x times x, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 x's. And then x over x makes 1. X over x makes 1. X over x makes 1. So what I have is 1 over x to the fourth, okay? If I did this using the quotient rule, I would write the base of x, take 3 and subtract 7, which gives me negative 4. And these two have to be the same. So x to the negative 4 is the same as 1 over x to the positive 4. So I like to think of it as a reciprocal. If it's a negative exponent, it's going to move downstairs, and this is going to move upstairs. So that becomes 1 over a to the positive n power. So what you're going to be expected to do is this. Notice a negative exponent does not make the base negative, okay? That happens all the time. Students think that negative exponent is going to take that 5 and make it negative. But what I want you to think of is this. Write a 1. This is going to go downstairs and become positive. This is going to come upstairs. So 1 over 5 to the third. And then that would be simplified as 1 over 125. If you do this on your calculator and you enter 5 to the negative third power, it's going to give you a decimal. And I am not going to want a decimal, and I will not give you credit if you do a decimal. It has to be in simplified fraction form or simplified form with a positive exponent. So this last one, this will go down, this will come up. So 1 over 2 to the positive 4, which becomes 1 over 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which becomes 1 over 16, okay? So the last rule that we have for exponents is going to be the zero exponent. And anything other than 0 raised to the 0 power always equals 1. A to the 0 does not equal 0. And let me just show you why this works, okay? If I have 2 to the third, I know that's 2 times 2 times 2, which gives me 8. If I have 2 squared, that's 2 times 2, which gives me 4. If I have 2 to the 1, that's 2. And so if I look at this pattern, 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. And that's why that works, okay? So 14 to the 0 power is 1. If I have an entire thing in parentheses to the 0 power, whether it's a number, whether it's a variable, that is going to equal 1. Now this one you have to be careful because that negative sign is not in parentheses with the 14. So that means take the opposite of 14 to the 0 power, which makes that one a negative 1. And then the last one is a little bit tricky because that says 11 times b to the 0, and b to the 0 is 1, so that just becomes 11. So that's going to finish the exponent part of 5.6, and then the next part we will do scientific notation.